Begin with public comment on non-agenda items. If there's a member of the public who wishes to speak on an item that is not on our agenda this evening, go ahead and come forward in the room. All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and get the move past the public comment period, close that and open our work session, which is the West Side Vision Plan presentation. Mr. Gavatuller, welcome.
Yes.
Thank you for being here.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Okay.
We're settling in, but I just saw Councilor Gabriel's running up the hall. Maybe give us just a second, Mr. Gavatuller.
Absolutely.
A little too punctual, I guess, today.
Jubilee days. Come on.
Sorry, Pat. You get a pass. All right. Mr. Gavatuller, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Honorable Mayor, members of council, thanks for the opportunity to present this evening alongside our two very wonderful interns from University of Colorado, Denver, Aslan Drosky and Avery Neese, who are joining us on Zoom this evening. But really, this work session is really the...
Councilor?
Here in the back.
Maybe if our IT folks can give us a little more. City Clerk, I think you've got the in the room volume, right?
Yes.
Is that better back there? Can you guys hear me in the back any better?
Let me run it back to the control room.
Okay, thank you. This is what I get for being so punctual.
Is that podium up all the way?
Probably not all. It is, yep, all the way up.
Phillips, did you have a nice 4th?
Very nice, yes.
Good.
I enjoyed Freedom Has a Birthday.
Yeah, I saw you there. It was great.
There, so it was really a nice event. So.
Yeah, good. I'm glad to hear it.
With the kids?
Yes.
Very cool.
The children had a great time.
Good.
I told them this year they needed to wait till the end to get sprayed by the hose. Last year was a lot hotter. But
Lesson learned.
this year we're going to wait till we go to nap time, and then right before that you can get sprayed, which is... They were all freezing right now.
Yeah, it makes sense. Ruby saw a kid get knocked down with it, and she was like, I'm no part of that.
That's solid.
What I noticed was wherever the watermelon was, by the time they got to our booth, it was like the watermelon was gone. So everybody's walking around with rinds, you know?
Mayor, we think we're as high as we can
Okay.
get that ceiling.
Great. All right, folks in the back, hear us okay? Okay, thank you all. All right, Mr. Gavatuller, thank you.
So yes, Honorable Mayor, members of council, thanks for the opportunity for to present on the West Side Vision study that we carried out this past year, really up until this point. I'm joined this evening via Zoom by Aslan Drosky and Avery Neese from University of Colorado, Denver. They're both now graduates of the Masters in Urban Planning program from there, so we're very proud of them for that. But this, round of applause for them. But really this effort was their capstone project. We contacted UC Denver last fall, saying that our department was interested in partnering with students to work on a plan that we always have lots of plans on the back burner and initiatives that we would like to get rolling, but it takes extra hands and efforts like the ones from Aslan and Avery to really dig into some of these, just given our normal work that we do and processes that we have to do. So we started the West Side Vision Study in January, really. We kicked it off. I think I will let Aslan and Avery really jump into the presentation as to the intensive public engagement efforts that we took to really try to gain a voice and understanding from West Side residents. Many of them who participated extensively are here with us this evening, which I'm happy to see. But yeah, we're really, as staff, and we're really happy with the document that came out. Again, this is a work session. No action is expected, of course, from this body this evening. But we really thought it was important to get in front of you guys and present the findings from these outreach efforts. So I'll turn it over to you, Honorable Mayor, to turn it over to the interns for a presentation, and I'm glad to answer questions alongside them afterwards.
Cool. Thank you, Mr. Capitular. Welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us, and appreciate you doing all this work for us, and I know how much of it was public engagement, and the council sure appreciates that, and I'm sure the folks who live over on the west side do as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to you both to get us where we're going.
Awesome. I'm going to just share my screen and let me know if it doesn't work out. Okay.
We've got it.
Okay. Do we have a full presentation?
Yes.
All right. Avery's going to start us off and then we'll get going.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us today. We really appreciate the opportunity to present our findings, not only for ourselves in the planning department, but also for the residents of the West Side. This is the findings of the West Side Vision Study. The overview, as Philip kind of concisely put earlier, that we were two master's degree students at the University of Colorado, Denver, and we were tasked with putting together an engagement process to listen to the folks that live on this side of town to find out what they love about their community, what they think could be improved about the community, and how we can build on the strengths of that community. And to that effect, we want to first kind of zoom in on what our study area was. The west side, as you can see in the smaller map on the left-hand side of the screen there, is that entire pink area, but our engagement focus is this shaded pink area here, right in the center, where most of the people that live in the west side are living. Again, as Philip said, we got kicked off in January and we started our engagement first thing in February and took it all the way into May. We used these 6 engagement types, both public pop-up, public meetings, pop-ups, interviews, surveys, hotlines, report back, just to keep ourselves accountable and make sure everything was transparent. As you can see, we started out with putting out the survey right away, and then we got the hotline going as soon as we could, so that way people could call and ask us questions about what the process is, what we're doing in their community and how we can benefit them most. And then we started right away in week 3 with our first public meeting, which was a resounding success, as Aslan will sort of go over a little bit later. And we only had 2 public meetings, one at the beginning and then one toward the end, one to kind of gauge where everyone was at, what they thought their strengths were, what they thought could be improved. And the second one was building on what we had heard from the first time around, while also maintaining our interviews and our surveys and our hotlines, so that way we can keep up to date and current if there anything were to need to be added, and or if anyone had any questions. The engagement we thought was amazing, and Aslan's going to go over just how amazing it was.
Thanks, Avery. So yeah, we just wanted to give y'all a brief overview of kind of some of the numbers, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what we heard from the people we spoke with. So between those 2 vision sessions that Avery talked about, we had over 100 attendees, kind of split evenly between the 2. The first one was a more typical kind of like public meeting format where everyone came and sat down with us, and then the second one was a bit more interactive with rotating stations. And then we had interviews throughout, which were 10 stakeholder and resident interviews, which just gave us the opportunity to spend a little bit more time with people, about an hour or so, and ask them more in-depth questions. And then between 2 versions of our online survey, we had 69 total responses. And something we wanted to highlight from that was that 66.67%, or about 2/3 of those respondents, were West Side residents. And this is something that we also really noticed throughout the in-person engagement events, was that we knew that people that we were talking to were actually residents of the West Side, which was really great. And so moving on to what we heard, I'm going to start with Vision Session 1, and then I will move into Vision Session 2 and some of the scenarios around that. But so for the first part of engagement, we really wanted to hear what people loved about their neighborhood and then use that to talk about what maybe they wanted to see improved and protected. So first we talked about what people loved, and what we heard was they loved their sense of community, and this was talked about through their neighbors and the sounds of kids playing, but they also really liked the quiet and isolation of the West Side and how kind of insular it felt. They also really appreciated location and access to amenities, with many people mentioning the footbridge, the access to the parks and the greenway, and local grocery stores and businesses just over the bridge into downtown. And then history was a huge one that came up throughout the process. For a lot of folks, it was the way that they introduced the neighborhood to us, which we found really valuable and kind of saw continue throughout the process, that people really were interested in and loved and wanted to protect the history of their neighborhood. And then lastly, a word we heard a lot was character. And it was something we were kind of trying to figure out what exactly that meant. And so we heard a lot of different words of what that meant for folks. We heard quirky, unique, eclectic, blue collar, weird, artistic, down to earth, and real. And all of these were said very affectionately. Not everyone agreed with those, but we just wanted to give you kind of a list of everything that we heard during this process. So moving on to what Westsiders wanted to see improved and protected, we found these 6 main things. We heard a lot of interesting things and ideas that people wanted to see in the West Side. But just for summary's sake, we put them into these 6 categories of neighborhood beautification, where people wanted to see a cleaning up of the Union Pacific property, maybe more code enforcement of cars, junk in yards. They wanted to see an improvement of safety and street infrastructure, and mainly this focused around evaluating flooding, as well as implementing safety and speed reduction tactics in their neighborhood. They also wanted to see kind of a building upon of the current access to green spaces they have by exploring opportunities for more, but also implementing measures for safe access to those green spaces, whether that be through crosswalks or improved sidewalks or things like that. And then they also wanted to see their existing connectivity and access to amenities protected and built upon through improving food access, and then protecting connectivity between the footbridge and downtown and the neighborhood with sidewalks and improved connections. They wanted to see neighborhood history protected. We heard ideas about education, public art, and signage, and then actual protection of historic homes when speaking about this. And then lastly, they wanted to see the protection of small scale and unique homes. And this is something that we talked about a lot throughout this process. And some of the ideas that came up around this were design concepts, zoning to protect heights, and protecting against teardowns. And this is something that we explored later on in our second part of engagement, which is when we used kind of what we heard in the first part to come up with 5 main scenarios for kind of understanding what might be the next steps for this neighborhood. So the 5 scenarios we came up with were preserving historic homes and design, preserving small-scale housing, exploring R1 single-family zoning, compatible housing designs, and then stricter code enforcement. And I'm going to give you all a brief summary of each of these scenarios that we went through with folks. So first, with preserving historic homes and designs, we kind of got the idea that there is a pretty big split concerning this concept. There is a really strong interest in preserving old homes, especially the eclectic design of homes and the small size of them, as well as providing input on the design of future homes. But where this split kind of happened was that many residents do seem to be aware of the potential cost consequences of preservation and of design requirements, and really are kind of torn on how best to protect those properties. So some folks felt it was absolutely the right thing to do a classic historic preservation ordinance, while other people thought that that was maybe not quite the right approach. So scenario 2, we introduced the idea of a overlay ordinance, which would regulate height and scale of new construction, as well as kind of put some stipulations on existing buildings so that renovations and additions couldn't be too large. Generally, the reaction to this was fairly positive, and there was a recognition that current zoning regulations are insufficient in preserving the character of the West Side neighborhood, and that residents are very passionate about protecting and safeguarding that character, and that there is interest in implementing measures to reduce the height of new homes, but that they specifically want special care taken towards still fostering diversity and architectural styles and maintaining the area's affordability. So our third scenario, we looked at exploring R1 zoning, which is the concept that what if the West Side was fully rezoned to R1? Generally, the reaction to this was pretty negative. We presented it in terms of what you would be allowed to do still if the whole neighborhood was rezoned to R1. And it kind of came to light that while folks are interested in maybe some density regulations, their primary concern is preserving the existing neighborhood scale, which does include kind of the building heights and the overall character of buildings, even if that means restricting newer construction or development. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they are against, those 2 to 4 unit properties, which do already occur in the neighborhood quite a bit. Scenario 4, we took a look at some compatible housing designs in a single family category, which is the top yellow line, a duplex category, which is the blue, and then a multifamily category, which is in the orange. And so we asked folks to identify what housing types they liked or didn't like from those 3. And for the first one, C rose to the top as the favorite for most people. And for the duplexes, B was the top answer, and that was the same answer for the multifamily as well. And so from these and from our conversations, we found that the main design choices that Westside residents did like were a recessed garage or no visible garage from the front. They seem generally not into the idea of a more suburban style home, and liked the idea of matching the general style of the neighborhood, typically a craftsman, and then they preferred a single story or an unassuming 2 stories. And finally, we have scenario 5, where we talked a little bit about what would it look like if there were stricter code enforcement in the neighborhood. And this is similar to historic preservation. Residents were pretty split on whether government should intervene here or if it should be a neighbor-to-neighbor interaction that solves maybe some of the issues they're facing. So many indicated that there should be a good neighbor program and people should assist in cleaning up repairs if there are some homeowners that are unable to do so. But some admitted that this may not be a long-term solution for the most part. Of any of the code enforcement, there was more interest in stricter enforcement for junked cars rather than other maintenance issues like home repairs, overgrowth of front yards, and the like. And so just a quick summary before we get into our recommendations, just kind of what we learned, that the West Side is a really unique and special place to live for a lot of reasons, and we really enjoyed getting to spend time there and getting to know the people that live there. And we heard people love their neighbors and the green spaces, the location, the history, and the homes. And a lot of these came up repeatedly, as I've mentioned, but during the engagement process, we overwhelmingly heard that residents love the small, eclectic homes and that they are an extremely important and distinguishing feature of the West Side, and that they are also open to and desire some type of government intervention, to protect this element of their neighborhood's character. So I'm going to move into recommendations, and Avery will give those to you.
Thank you, Aslan. As she had said, we took everything that we had learned from our interactions with the folks on the West Side and all of our conversations that we had with them as well, and we boiled it down to 4 recommendations that we then asked the people that took the survey to rank. So this is the ranked order in which they would like to see things enacted. The first one was, as Aslan had said, preserving that eclectic housing type, small-scale housing. The main thing that we had heard in our talks, especially when we did the scenarios, was that the maximum allowable heights were just too high for the neighborhood. So reducing the allowable height to 25 feet and maintaining a 2,000 square foot lot with allowable additions of 20% of the existing footprint every few years to give people the opportunity to do things like a mother-in-law suite, an extra bedroom, things of that nature. And how best to enact this would be continuing to work with the planning staff, just to try and figure out the nitty-gritty of how this ordinance can be enacted on the west side, just for the west side. I would like to note that the first recommendation and the second recommendation actually tied for first. And the second recommendation is the community design guidebook.
Hey, Avery, before you move on, Councilor O'Doherty has a question for you.
On
yeah,
the
absolutely.
previous slide, you said 2,000 foot. I assumed that was the house, and then I think I heard you say lot size. So what's the maximum footprint? 2,000 square feet? Is that the house or the lot?
That would, I believe, be the home.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. All right, back to you, Avery.
Thank you. Moving on to the design guidebook, residents were really adamant about making sure that the design of the homes fit within the character of the community. As Adeline mentioned previously, that key word was character. So creating a photo book of the West Side homes that everyone can sort of agree upon represents the West Side best, by taking a walking tour that is resident-led and creating a committee of residents and West Side and Laramie planning staff to kind of sort of create a guidebook for future developers and things of that nature. So that way people coming in that want to invest in this community have an idea of what the community's values are and what they want to see built and how they want to see their community grow. Moving on to the third recommendation, we heard, especially in the beginning of our engagement process, that there had been an increase in speeding and unsafe traffic in the community. So just implementing those traffic calming measures at key locations identified by residents of the West Side, we think would be the best next step in that. Things like extra stop signs, maybe raised crosswalks, just depending on what's needed at the time. And then finally, the fourth recommendation was another thing that we had heard, especially at the beginning of our engagement, was that flooding had seen an uptick in recent years. So we thought that creating a flooding report to help educate both the residents of the West Side and officials on why is it happening, how is it impacting homes, what can be used as preventative measures, and also how can these things be, how can these impacts be mitigated in the future. These are the recommendations that we thought would be best moving forward for the West Side based on our engagement study. And if you would like to read more in depth about these, you can find our full report on the Laramie website, along with our executive summaries and our data we had collected throughout. Now, Aslan and I are happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Council members, any questions? Councilor Pierce, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm wondering, I didn't notice it in the presentation, and I didn't hear anything when I was at one of the community-wide events, but was there any discussion related to tiny homes? Obviously less than 2,000 square feet, but probably like 1,000 square feet or under. Did you hear anything in that regard?
Yeah, we had some discussion around it. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Okay. Yeah, we had some discussion around it because I believe there was a tiny home constructed in the West Side in the last, I want to say 5 years or so, maybe 10. And so I think the reason we kind of came to the idea of the overlay ordinance is because it would continue to allow things like tiny homes to be built in the West Side. There's a lot of really unique and cool housing types there. And so just kind of putting a little bit of regulation on height and size would still allow stuff like that to happen. And it seemed pretty amenable to residents to have tiny homes, but I think they're also still interested in having them fit into the character as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Other questions, council members? I have a couple of questions. Do you, and Mr. Gabatullo, this may be a question for you as well, but is the increase in flooding a result of spring runoff or increased storm runoff?
Yes, Honorable Mayor, we did, engage with Public Works on this question because Cedar Street was recently improved. There's no real direct correlation that we can, go off of that's saying that it's not an increase in the amount of storms and the intensity of those. So it's, we've heard that. We heard that throughout this process of the increased flooding. But also we haven't done a meteorological study, but we've all kind of witnessed ourselves by living here that the storms are becoming more intense, and perhaps it's not more rain over the course of the year, but the intensity of the storms is increasing, which is really, why flooding occurs. So.
And so it's stormwater flooding, not sort of like Laramie River flooding in the spring that's increased, right?
No, it's stormwater.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yes.
Thank you. And then the other question I had while you're up there is, do we require, if someone were to construct a home that had alley access to their garage, would they be required to pave the alley?
Honorable Mayor, no, they would not unless it is a multifamily development over 4 units and up.
Great. And I think that's all the questions I had for right now. Anyone else? Councilor Richardson, please.
Thank you. I have a bit of a follow-up to your question on flooding. Can city manager or someone remind us of the funding that we are getting to address some of that flooding, and what locations of the city that is being focused on?
City manager?
Mayor,
Go ahead.
yes, thank you, Mayor. Through you, Councilor Richardson, we have a couple different allocations approved in the budget I'll touch on just briefly. Council will recall last budget year, you did approve some funding for the city to engage in some climate modeling potentially, so that we might be gain some confidence, I should say, that our stormwater system is being designed adequately if, in fact, historic 100, 200, and 300-year storm frequencies and patterns are changing or not. Where we're at with that is I have not entered into contract to do that work yet. The reason being that we, in the meantime, discovered a technical assistance program through the Environmental Protection Agency Region 8 out of Denver that is free to us for 2 of our utilities, not for stormwater though. So recognizing the intersection between our wastewater system and stormwater system, we wanted to complete that technical advisory program first and then execute the funding and likely a contract with a consultant for wrapping around stormwater and looking comprehensively at that third part of our utility systems. I think, Councilor Richardson, I answered your question. If I have forgotten something, please remind me.
No, thank you for that reminder. I thank you. Yep, that's great.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilor Gabriel?
Thanks, Mayor. I was just curious about the number of people engaged in the survey. It says your goal was to engage with 15% or 108, and you had 162 engaged in the West Side Vision Study. Can you give me an idea of the philosophy behind your initial 15% of the West Side?
Yeah, so typically in engagement processes, and this is kind of a standard practice for planning, it's around 10%. And so we wanted to aim a little bit higher than that. And so the 15% of it was not arbitrary, but was an attempt for us to try to reach more people. Ultimately, the goal was just to reach as many people as we could. But we just wanted to have some sort of number at the end to kind of check back in with.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor. Other questions? All right, I'm going to turn it over to the public. Thank you all for being here. If anyone has any comments about this, we'd sure like to hear them. So come forward in the room or raise your hand if you're on the Zoom call. Please. Not to try to twist your arm into it, but we do want to hear from you. So we'll just need your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name's Gwendolyn Christie. I'm a homeowner on the west side, and I'm also on the County Historic Preservation Board. I personally really enjoyed this process. I learned a lot about my community, and I learned a lot about planning. And just 2 things I'd like to inform you guys on, I guess, is that The National Register Historic District project has started. A contract has been awarded, and they'll be coming to do fieldwork in August. And so the board will be reaching out to you all at some point, but we'd like to organize a tour of the neighborhood to talk about some of these things in the plan as well as in the district nomination, along with the community members and any other government officials who'd like to come, and the contractors, so that we all kind of stay on the same page. And so that's some, semi-goal that is in this plan, is to kind of have that work done. And then the second thing is that we have a neighborhood organization, the West Side League of Neighbors, and we have begun to explore a zoning overlay with city planning. We've prepared that text, and we just need to do the pre-app, get a pre-app meeting. But the zoning overlay is specifically limited to height, lot size, scale of the building on the lot size, a limit to the height of accessory buildings that's lower than in the typical residential zoning, and a longer waiting period for demolition. So those are some of the things we're exploring right now. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And council members, on our agenda review this evening, you will see August 13th is that meeting. We have a joint meeting with the county commissioners, and we will hear from Preservation Board on the west side. Yeah,
sorry.
Councilor Richardson.
Is planning working with you all to spread the word about that tour? Is that something that the city is involved in helping share the news about, so that we're...
And we'll plug back to public comment in just a second, for sure. Go ahead. No, go ahead, Mr. Kamatula, please.
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Richardson, yes, we're working to implement these recommendations as they come forth from the community itself. So at this point in time, we haven't been directed to necessarily write an overlay zoning district for this area ourselves as staff, but as Gwendolyn just mentioned, it's coming from them. As far as the walking tour goes, yes, I mean, we'll certainly work with them to use social media and our other outlets to help get the word out about that.
Great. And sorry, I totally botched the order of operations.
You're fine.
Sorry about that.
You're fine. It's a work session. City Clerk, did you have something to add?
Mayor, just as a reminder to the council, if we do a tour of the west side, since it is a forthcoming action item, we do need to call a meeting to do that tour if we have a quorum there.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, City Clerk.
Yeah.
So council, when that comes forward, we'll just do an RSVP sort of situation, and if there's going to be 4 or less, we will go. Otherwise, we will make it a meeting. Okay. Councilor O'Doherty? We're just in the midst of public comment, but we're taking a pit stop on public comment. You want to wait for a minute? Okay, back to public comment. Sorry, everyone. Anybody else like to comment to the council? Siobhan, please. We'll just need your name for the record, and we'll, councilors, write your questions down.
Hello, everyone. I'm Siobhan Kelly, and just a couple of quick thoughts. When we talk about traffic control, I am wondering if it would be possible to get one of those red light systems across Snowy Range Road from the west side to that road that goes to the Greenbelt access. When crossing Snowy Range Road with a dog, a very hyperactive dog especially, that can be a very, very scary crossing. And then that would be a safety factor all the way from town to that trailhead without having to drive to the trailhead. And a few thoughts, my thoughts on flooding. Just thinking ahead to all of that open land, the fields between the river and Cedar, that should development be proposed for those areas, it could have a profound impact on flooding on the west side. And the flooding that we last experienced had to do with the stormwater and the stormwater system. And if somebody happened to find a great big tree stump in the stormwater system that affected their property, in other words, maintaining the system so that it operates as it's meant to, so that it can manage all that runoff. So those were two thoughts on flooding. And even something, I think you've heard it before, something like paving alleyways also creates one less way, one more paved area where runoff can't go directly into the ground as it does now. So thank you, and we appreciate so much you bringing this great team to the west side, and it was a wonderful process. It was wonderful to see our neighbors and to think about the future, and as the name says, to create a vision and for that future. So thank you.
Thank you, Siobhan. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak? Thank you for being here. We'll just need your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Mary Cisneros. I am the director at the Lincoln Community Center on the corner of Grand and Cedar Street, which is all the area we're talking about right now. And at first I thought this might not be this meeting that I would bring this up at, but as I hear about flooding and things like that, I think it's the perfect meeting. We do not have any form of emergency sounding, no alert. A lot of neighborhoods in our communities have emergency alerts at their schools. We do not have an elementary school on our side of our part of the city. However, we do have Lincoln Community Center, which houses Laramie Head Start, as well as many other things. I am proposing and asking if that would be something that we could consider in the near future to help protect our residents of Laramie West Side community. We don't hear anything from the other side of town. We don't hear anything from West Laramie as far as emergency alerts. So just an idea that I think would be very beneficial to our citizens in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing that up. Sure appreciate it.
Thank you for that.
Anyone else? Please come forward. Thank you for being here. We'll just need your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name's Evan Eganoff. I'm a West Side resident. I just wanted to publicly thank Aslan and Avery and Derek and Philip. Their staff was great. It was a really good experience, and everyone put a lot of effort in and really helped us out. So just wanted to thank them all.
Well, we sure appreciate you taking time to share that. Anyone else like to add some public comment to this? Welcome, Wendy. We will need your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Wendy Chapman. I've been a resident of the West Side for almost 26 years, which is just, how can time pass so quickly? I'm also a huge fan of the neighborhood, which is why I had to take the opportunity to again, thank Avery and Aslan, and it was a great process. I made a few notes while we were all talking earlier. I think that Siobhan's idea of having a crossing, a safe crossing across Snowy Range Road is a good idea to get to the green belt. Also, that the Snowy Range Road is a benefit to our neighborhood. It's been in place for a little while, and Cedar Street is much more quiet now because of this road. I didn't expect it, but I will say I've been there long enough to know it's an improvement to the neighborhood. Okay. Oh, your comment about tiny homes. Many of our homes are tiny. We have the.
I'm thinking new construction.
Sure, but we have the original tiny homes before they were cool. Okay, my house is 730 square feet. So I also wanted to just mention something about flooding and the runoff. The rain in August, almost 2 years ago now, which was just incredible. I was lucky. I must be sort of on a high point on Cedar because I didn't have rain up in my yard, but just a block down. Siobhan actually had rain all up into her yard, and then another block or so down, a neighbor was out with a bobcat trying to push water towards the gutter, and I don't know this for sure, but it does seem that the improvement on Cedar, on North Cedar, which we all love to drive over, did create a higher point and does cause the water to flood on South Cedar. Again, anything that got, any changes can really, really have a big effect on the drainage. And if the river floods, which river will overflow, then we're, the water doesn't just all go to the river automatically. We're vulnerable where we are. So thank you all for taking all this in. And as Siobhan said, I'm also looking forward to the future. I really appreciate having everyone's ear, and I'm optimistic about what's going to happen in the neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Anyone else like to add to this? Go ahead and come forward in the room. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Good evening.
We'll just need your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just said, I need your name. You'll have 3 minutes. You were on it already.
I was about to give that. Eric Henderson. I reside in my 20th year in the west side, 168 North Pine. With respect to flooding, hasn't been mentioned, but not only surface water are concerned, but groundwater, water table, whatever that might be, I believe equally concerned. Regardless of any building's current status is every spring, substantial noticeability with respect to those that have sump pumps and other activity that has not been mentioned, was not integrated into the summary. I would like to go back and say in October 2021, development regarding a request to go from R2 to B1 zoning in a change in respect to 260 North Pine Street. I would have thought that this absolutely wonderful process would have been engaged in 3 years ago. And while it was not, I'm not sure what the delay was, but much of this conversation seemed to have an agenda. And from the very onset with February meeting in respect to the West Side Vision Project, the very first meeting in which I attended both sessions, I asked why it didn't incorporate the master plan in terms of suggestions or allowing for the status quo. It seemed to press change as the direction with an agenda in that regard, per my perception. I don't have a survey of others that feel that way, but that is definitely genuinely my feeling. And in the regard to that, I would give evidence in respect to the displays of options of what housing might look like. Not one of the visuals were what we saw out the window as we were asked the question. You couldn't look out on the street side and see any one of those of similarity with respect to that. They may have been with respect to height. They may have been with respect to the zoning language specificity, but they do not seem to incorporate the Universal Development Code, as I understand was approved in 23 perhaps, somewhere around there, in terms of like and similarity. And I think that that's a very critical piece. Referring back to the paved alleyway of 260 North Pine Street, not one area alley in the west side is paved with respect to that type of similarity. It doesn't exist. With that type of surface water that will change, you're basically creating a street from Bernie's restaurant direction to Fremont Street through this area because you're allowing for an overbuild of 260 North Pine Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Anyone else like to add some public comment to this meeting? Go ahead and come forward in the room or raise your hand on the Zoom call. All right. Seeing none, we will come back to the council for any comments or further questions. Councilor O'Doherty.
So I should have asked this back when we were talking about questions. So maybe our advisors there might have some input, but was there any discussion of, I know Cedar was B1, or parts of it are. Is there any discussion of having businesses there again? I did see something about groceries, but then I also heard a lot of, when we had this discussion a couple of years ago, people pretty upset if anything came into the neighborhood. So I was wondering what the community feeling about like having a grocery store or a restaurant. Was there opposition to that, or were people interested?
Avery and Aslan, do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, we do. Especially in the February visioning session, people were very, very interested in the idea of having a local grocer. While people were a little bit more hesitant about adding additional business because they thought it would take away from the restaurants and the bar that is currently in the West Side. But no, people were very open to the idea of having a local grocer or things of that nature.
And do you have a follow-up, Councilor? And I had maybe a follow-up. One of the things that I had seen is I can't recall, I was looking really quick to see if I could pull it up, but when you outlined, maybe it was like one of the characters in the neighborhood that was important, but that it was quiet was a note, and that seems sort of like, not in opposition, but sort of maybe in opposition, I guess, to like a bustling business. A business maybe doesn't want it to be particularly quiet in front of their store, right? Certainly a grocery store would not be particularly quiet. And so I'm trying to figure out what that distinction is, because a grocery store, maybe it is busy and loud in the right times of day to make it appropriate, where like maybe a microbrewery might be like something people don't want because it's loud in the wrong times of the day, or loud in a different way. I'm curious if you parse that out at all.
In regards to your comment about the noise of a grocery store, I think that what the residents are looking for is not a full-sized Safeway or King Soopers or anything like that, but something where they can get local necessities without having to drive over Snowy Range Road or anything like that, or having to cross the footbridge. Something on their side of town that they can go quickly and get some bread or some eggs, maybe something quick for dinner. Something local. A bodega comes to mind as an example. And then in terms of business, I think that you are correct. If a business were to move in there, they would want to have some sort of traffic. And I think that's just going to that's not something I could personally answer. Just something that would have to be worked out through the process.
Understood, yeah. Okay.
I did just want to add really quick that part of the conversation around quiet was people really liked that it was quiet from cars, like there was not as much traffic, but we did hear from a lot of neighbors that they loved the sound of the train and of their neighbors and of being able to see their neighbors. So I think it's less of a people sound is the bothering part, but more that they appreciate that there's less traffic sounds.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. I really appreciate it. That does help to clarify it. Councilor Richardson?
Thank you. Kind of going back to the flooding issue and some of the conversation around alleyways. When I think about this, I think a dirt alleyway, could absorb more of that water. On the flip side of that, I wonder when concrete alleyways are made, can you create them in a way that directs your water so that you are moving it to a certain direction? And I don't expect this to be answered tonight because we don't have any engineers on the phone, but or on the line, but maybe city manager has an answer to this. Is there data behind the pros and cons to keeping it dirt versus cement? And I also recognize that with higher housing, you're going to have more people driving over that, right? So it's going to impact that dirt anyway. So I'm just trying to kind of think about the pluses and minuses to this.
Mr. Gabatuller, please.
Yes, Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Richardson. A good example of a new paved alleyway would be next to Rocky Mountain Car Wash. And if you drive up there, the standard, the engineering design standard that the city has adopted is a valley pan type, a larger valley pan type option. So the water is all directed, if an alley is paved, it is directed away from the neighboring properties and down to the street where there is capacity to absorb stormwater. So as far as data that compares unpaved versus paved, I would just say that we know where it's going if it's paved. We don't know where it's going if it's not. I mean, it could be pooling. When you pave an alleyway, we strongly believe it actually improves the drainage of the area because we're not pushing it. A paved alley isn't pushing water towards property. It's away from property towards city infrastructure that can absorb it.
Councilor Pierce?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And Philip, while you're up here, remind me about the development that's relatively new, that's a couple blocks north of the post office, so still on 5th, and I think it's a fourplex.
It's just across the street from the post office.
It's across. So that particular development required paving in the alleyway, and it was because the folks were actually driving into a garage from the alleyway. Is that correct?
Yes, Honorable Mayor, through you to
Okay.
Councilor Pierce, that is correct. And then the same situation is on Pine Street, where the proposed development is have alley access for their garages, rear loading garages.
Okay, so that kind of makes sense to me that you would want to do that, because if you have concrete or whatever in your garage, you're going to want to have that slope going up into the garage and not have the, from dirt to the garage, right? So you need something to keep you going, so you don't have to jump into your garage, right?
And Mr. Gabatuller, are there solutions for maintaining permeability and paving? Are there, because I think, so my question is because I agree with you about directing the stormwater in the right way, but because the funding doesn't exist to improve the entirety of the system, we find issues where we have funneled it to a place where eventually we find a bottleneck or a tree root or something of the sort. And in the meantime, it might be beneficial to have sort of a second set of solutions. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I hope this is getting to your question, but part of our requirement of any site plan is comparing the existing site as it is with the new structure, the new parking lot, the new impervious surface, so to speak, and providing for adequate drainage infrastructure, whether it be a detention pond on a larger site or some channeling or swales or whatever it may be, whatever drainage infrastructure that the developer's proposing. Those calculations are engineered. I mean, the engineers provide those calculations with what the additional runoff's going to be and how they're going to capture that. So we do require that as part of this. And it's no different for an alleyway, right? I mean, it's the calculations are done, and the existing infrastructure in the area, for the most part, has been modeled in most parts of the city. I mean, there are some where there's regional detention ponds and so forth that capture larger areas where additional modeling is required, but the calculations that we get have to be approved by our city engineer to ensure that new development is not overburdening our stormwater system.
Yeah, I sure appreciate that. And I know that we are in the midst of that conversation about improving opportunities for funding stormwater as well. So hopefully that can address some of these concerns in a sort of longer horizon. Councilor O'Doherty?
I want to point out to the public that we're doing stormwater studies, and one of the proposals is that we do a lot of camera scoping, the water lines, or the stormwater, thank you, stormwater lines. And so that's a process that should really help us if what you suspect is that there's some trees blocking certain routes. That might get to the bottom of that problem. Thanks.
And may indicate some need for more street sweeping and things of the sort that could be otherwise funded. So, other questions, council members? Okay. Well, councilors, if there's no more comments or questions from the council, that's going to conclude our work session for the evening. All right, last chance. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We'll go ahead and close that work session. We're going to move on to council updates and comments, and I want to just thank everybody for being here. Thanks for taking time.
Thanks,
And yeah, Avery and Aslan, thank you for all the work you did for us. It's really appreciated, and I hope you heard that echoed back to you from the public as well. It's a lot of work, what you did, and we see you and appreciate it. Thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
And come work for the city of Laramie. All right, councilors, we'll give it just a minute to clear out as folks leave, and we'll just circle back in 2 minutes.
Everything is like 4 feet tall.
Like spiders. It's a loofah. You can grow a loofah.
In my mind, I was like those, these drivers that were like the X's in concrete. I was like, awesome. We have to just do that in the middle alley.
Pavement grade and put in like
Sure. Yeah.
Like a
stormwater along the way.
Right? Underneath the grates, they could do that.
All right. Does everyone feel ready to hop into updates and comments? All right. We're going to start with Councilor Somerville. If you've got any updates or comments, your turn. All right. Councilor Somerville, any updates or comments? I'll circle back to her. Maybe she stepped away because I said we would take a minute and it really was a minute. All right, Councilor Doherty.
I don't have any updates. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Shumway.
Our city clerk said that we have not received any applications for the new Laramie Youth Council, so if any of you can encourage people you know, we may have 4 or 5 that will return, but we've got some work to do on that if we are prepared to get that started in the fall. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The Urban Renewal Agency is holding an event next week, and more interest and more participants than were ever anticipated.
Really?
Yeah. So it should be fun and kind of exciting to attend and see who all shows up. It's a day event split between 2 days. So I think probably, do council get an announcement about?
Maybe not, we just got it TV.
Maybe.
Afternoon, Wednesday afternoon at 7.
17, 18, yeah. So, and I think they're still trying to hone in on a location for day 2. It's going to be at the MOC for day 1. And I think because of the numbers, things got a little sketchier because of what else was planned out there. I'm not sure, but Todd has all the details. So if you have any questions, just talk to Todd, and he knows. And then the Ranch Advisory Commission, we had a draft of kind of our new goals set up, and then we each submitted our edits and our thoughts to what the first draft was. So we had to get that turned in yesterday by 5, And I was like, by noon, I was all excited that I wasn't, last minute. But yeah, so that's in process. And I'm not exactly sure what our timeline is, but we'll be meeting next week in the afternoon on Thursday, if anybody's interested, to go over what we have so far in the draft form for the ranch. But it hits all topics, so it hits water rights, irrigation infrastructure, soil, testing, public access, all sorts of things. I mean, it hits everything. So all the topics will be discussed, which is very cool.
Thank you, Councilor Pierce.
Yeah.
Looking forward to hearing more about that. The airport board meets in the morning, so I'll have an update there in 2 weeks for you all. I'm sure all or most of you were at Freedom Has a Birthday. I never made it to the council booth somehow. I was there all day and never made it. So thank you all for holding that down. And just wanted to take a minute to recognize the city clerk's daughter for singing the national anthem and our parks crew for making the park look so good. And somehow the event just came up and went away in a day. And there was sort of like no way to know it happened the next morning. So I thought that was pretty remarkable. Yeah, Councilor Pierce?
Yeah, and we had a thought while we were at the booth about maybe in the future, when we have the city council booth, and certainly up for discussion and probably too early to talk about now, but I just wanted to get it out there so I don't forget. But we had Aaron's disability disabilities right next to us, and we had the thought, how cool would it be for the community to see if we could get our other boards and commissions to and then have it attached to the city council table, and just because they think, I mean, it's huge. Our volunteers that work on those boards and commissions, I mean, it's amazing, the work. And I think if we could have some sort of a line of tables that just shows people, it's not just the 9 of us and maybe the guy who picks up your garbage that right? It's all these other volunteers that are out there doing a lot of things. Now, it could be a total pipe dream, right? But I just think it would be great for the community to see the whole large group of folks that we have out there, in addition to city staff and in addition to us, right? I think, anyway, just my personal, kind of off topic, but anyway, sorry.
No, thank you. I actually had kind of a similar thought when I was standing at the bouncy castle for like 1 hour in, and I thought if the council booth was right here, I'd have people to chat with. But I'm sure that's the most popular place around. All right. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no meetings to report, but I do want to say I think that's a very creative idea. And while we were at the booth, we had a lot of inquiries and attention and people asking questions and very interested. And sometimes there were more people asking questions and wanting information than we were really able to handle, and they'd have to wait. So I like the idea of having maybe 2 commissions at each or something, but just to have us lined up so that people can fully engage and ask these questions. And we did pass these out, and we passed them out to teachers who might have students who want to volunteer, and gave them several, and people were very excited about the app. And I think for us to get more information out about that as we develop that and refine the use. But I like your idea.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Newman.
I don't have any updates. I do have a comment. Just in case you guys didn't see my Facebook, the reason why I wasn't at Freedom Has a Birthday is both of my cars decided that the engine needed to blow up at the same time. So that I was, in like 4 days. So publicly apologize to you guys for not coming. But I had I didn't make it to Freedom Has a Birthday. I didn't get to watch any of the fireworks to try to get some of these vehicles back up and running. So I apologize for not being there. But it sounds like it went well. So. Thank you, guys.
Well, that seems like a pretty fair excuse. Councilor Richardson.
So Laramie Main Street Alliance met last week, and as many of you may know, they are gearing up for Brewfest as their fundraiser, and just continuing to work on all the things for downtown. So I believe they still need volunteers, so please reach out to Laramie Main Street and Trey if that's something you can help with on Saturday. We had the DDA meeting tonight. They have gotten most of the surveys out to downtown businesses and are now had floated the idea of discussion on whether a DDA mill or TIF tax. Well, there was actually, we had guests from URA come and then from the Business Council come as well and kind of discuss what URA's role would look like, what kind of a joint effort between URA and DDA could look like in terms of taxing, and then started in on a discussion as to whether the DDA would like to think about housing downtown, and that will be then a discussion point for next time whether they want to move forward with that or not. So.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Gabriel?
Kind of city council non-related, but went and saw the big boy on June 30th. If we could somehow get the big boy to come here like every month or something, it would be amazing. That was just something else to see a crowd like that. And this is non-related too. Many of you might have saw the letter that Mark Jenkins wrote to the editor in the Boomerang about Vitavu and the lack of garbage receptacles. And so that kind of concerned me because people were leaving garbage bags out, and then the animals, of course, would tear them apart or whatever, whoever would get after them. So it really created a problem up there. So Mark wrote about it in the Boomerang. I called Aaron Voos, who's the public information officer for the Forest Service. I happen to know him a little bit. And he told me that the contractor was having trouble with their bear-resistant receptacles, and so they weren't installed. And so that's what people were doing. They were just leaving their garbage out. But since that time, it's been taken care of. And it was nice to hear from Aaron that the Forest Service was concerned. And because it sounded like, I wasn't up there, but it sounded like quite a problem. And then tomorrow at noon, I think the mayor, you know more about this, there's a dedication for Pilot Hill and a new trail, right, at noon.
There is I just asked if they were having the ribbon cutting tomorrow. It is not going to be tomorrow. They have like a pie and ice cream social instead. I'm waiting to hear where.
Okay.
I'll tell you as soon as I know.
Okay, sounds good. And then after that, of course.
Trailhead.
Oh, that's it.
It is at the Trailhead. Good job crowdsourcing it, everyone. Trailhead.
Mayor,
please.
I like the idea of having more of the commissions and different groups have tables there, but I think we need to put a dunk booth right by the bouncy house.
Oh, that
we could have, everyone gets to come up and we say, ask the city council a question. If they like the answer, they don't throw the ball. If they don't like the answer, they hit the paddle.
Genius idea.
They'll get to know us really well.
That's right.
Right by the bouncy house.
Yeah, that sounds great to me.
We all get dunked.
So long as it's warmer than.
Yeah, but.
Councilor Richardson.
One more little plug that is only slightly city related, and that is Wyo Gives Day is tomorrow as well. LPAC is hosting a tattoo booth downtown at Laradies Lane.
Cool.
And I think I might be making this up, but I'm pretty sure I'm not, that they, the new parking lot designs, that those are the tattoos that they are doing. So that's just pretty fun. But to all of our wonderful Laramie nonprofits, if there is one you love, think about giving tomorrow, because it will be matched.
Thank you, Councilor Richardson. And I would just add, Councilor Gabriel, noon to 1:30 at the Willett kiosk for the Pilot Hill event. So thank you for bringing that up. City Clerk?
Mayor, just since it was brought up a couple of times tonight, I thought it might be worth noting that the Laramie Police Advisory Board was going to join the police department at their booth. I didn't make it over to their booth to see how many of them attended, but they are one of your boards that is also interested in serving in that way, and Freedom Has a Birthday. So
Yeah, we made it over. Their booth was well attended. It was very busy. Apparently, the chief had mentioned that they gave away substantially more stuff than they ever have in the past, glasses and things. So they had all kinds of folks visiting.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it was amazing weather, too. I mean,
Yeah.
the weather was just perfect,
They
kind of.
killed all the mosquitoes.
That's right. I saw Hunter out there with like a fogger himself. So
People
yeah,
were
it's great.
saying, thanks for having the mosquito people, because when I got there earlier, it was like, thanks for having the mosquito guys,
Yeah.
like the night before they were. Then were you there when the little guy cried because the fire truck scared him? No. Oh. It's like, oh, too big. It was,
They're more fun on TV, right?
Yeah.
You're like, this thing's huge.
Yeah. Oh.
All right. Councilors, we're going to move into, Councilor Somerville, second chance if you have any updates or comments. All right. We're going to move then to agenda review. Got a short agenda for you all coming up.
It's kind of nice because we've been busy.
Yeah, we've been pretty busy. It'll be a refreshing one. And not saying it'll be short, you never know, but I will promise nothing. But does anybody have any questions on the agenda at this point? All right. All right, everybody. Well, happy Jubilee Days, Laramie, and we are adjourned.